Welcome to the Pitch of Discontent. Owen back again for another guest episode. Very excited to have Sean from Make Them Suffer joining me through the digital ether. Sean, hello. How you doing?
I'm good, on. How are you, dude?
I'm doing very well. We were just briefly chatting off mic about our caffeine choices and being extremely well wired for the day. You've been
Yeah.
doing back-to-back interviews, so I'm sure it's a must for you.
Absolutely, super important. It's actually, it's part of my assimilation with with I don't know, the community, with the neighborhood. Look, I do have a coffee machine at home, but honestly, I often will I do that as my second coffee of the day. But the first coffee of the day, I have to get to a cafe and just like it wakes me up to have to say hello to someone in the morning.
Yeah. No, dude, I totally relate. I think like running errands, like whatever it may be, like popping down to the shops or going to get something and then like swinging by and getting a coffee on the way. Great
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah,
It's good stuff.
yeah, for sure.
Sean, we're here to chat about Make Them Suffer. We're here to chat about the new record. Before we jump into all of that, I want to quickly touch on a cool experience that you guys recently went through. You just got back from China playing a festival over there. Can you tell me what that was like?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a whirlwind because it was we were in and out in over the course of we slept two nights there. So
Yeah,
we had
wow.
the night that we got in, and then we woke up the next day, went to lunch, did sound check, played the show, and then left the next morning. So it was definitely a bit of a whirlwind in terms of that. But I mean, we had no expectations of what we had. Like, there's very little like footage or stuff on the internet of bands playing China. So really had no idea what to expect. And got there, we were super thrilled with everything. The food was incredible, especially we played in a park which was in a more it looked like a big city to me, but one of the promoters was telling me that it was considered a very small town.
Small for China is probably like 3 million people, though. So it's all relative.
Yeah, I mean, it had skyscrapers, but it did feel like a smaller population, I suppose.
Right.
But yeah, we went for a trip into town and had lunch at this little family-owned restaurant that made or we had some noodles, like a mixture of different like dry noodles, and then we had a couple different noodle soups and stuff like that. And these noodles, like, I've never had homemade authentic Chinese noodles.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, it's like nothing you've ever had before. The texture of it, it's just incredible. If you've ever had homemade pasta, it's kind of like, it's got that kind of like doughy texture to it.
Yeah.
It's way more flavorsome than anything you'd buy that's like dried pasta or whatever that you buy.
Yeah, especially when that stuff's fresh, like you can really kind of taste the difference in like the texture and everything. So I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that was incredible. And everyone was super lovely and hospitable. The hotel was really cool. It had this robot in the lobby that was just beeping and booping around the place.
I saw some stuff on Instagram from Alex and Nick, I think, of like the robot has caught the elevator or something.
Yeah.
That was like a big thing.
Yeah, I caught the elevator down to the lobby, and the doors opened, and the facing me was just this robot, and it started moving towards me, and I was like, oh shit, it's trying to get in the elevator. And like I shuffled around to the side and I was like, excuse me, turned around and pressed the button and went upstairs.
That's so sick.
Yeah, it was super cool. So apparently people give it like their like Uber Eats or whatever, and it takes it up to their room.
Living in the future. That's brilliant.
Yeah, super cool. But the show was good.
I was interested to kind of know what the vibe was like, because like you guys are obviously busy with touring. You're always in the States, Canada, Europe. And I was looking back through some of your touring stuff, and I saw that you were in Japan in like 2018, like pre-pandemic. But I'm fairly certain this was your first time playing in China, correct?
Yeah, first time we've ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what was the difference, I guess, or the feeling that's like different playing shows for like an Eastern audience versus like a traditionally Western audience? Like, was there any kind of different vibe that you noticed, or did you feel anything different in as far as like touring over there?
I think it's very few bands do. Very few like Western bands do get over there and tour and stuff like that. And people had traveled all around the country to this festival, supposedly, and it wasn't massive. There was probably like a couple thousand people, maybe 3,000 people all up or something like that. Like it was a pretty small festival. And I was asking some of the like the local promoters and stuff like that about previous bands that had come through, and they said, oh, this band came through, and I was asking about like the room sizes, and it was like pretty small for like how big those bands were. I'm not going to say any names or whatever, but the positive thing about playing to a crowd like that is that they're like way more excited. Like when you play like LA or New York or something like that, it's like you got to really wow them for them to get into it. I feel sometimes you have to kind of work for that, because they're just like, oh, another band, like I've seen like 5 this week, and it's all you know what I mean. But when you are like starved of live music, you're gonna kind of like rock out that much more to it, and that's what we saw from that crowd. There was this big mud pit in the middle, and people were just getting absolutely soaked in mud because it was in a park and it had rained the night before. And people just cutting sick and letting loose, and it was super cool in that sense. And then compare that to, I suppose, to compare that to the Japanese crowds. I find Japanese crowds to be very like, it's super weird. As a vocalist, I find talking to a Japanese crowd, because when you are playing in front of an Australian audience, for example, you'll like say something, and then between your dialogue, there's like murmurs and people yelling and hecklers and whatever, just people being just generally rowdy. And in Japan, the shows that I played, at least, what I found during those shows was that between dialogue, it's just like silence, and everyone is like looking at you, and it's very like
intense.
Intense, and like kind of like respectful in a way, I suppose. And then they do sort of get into it. I didn't see a whole lot of like moshing, like in terms of like karate kicks and that sort of stuff, but like did see a lot of they're very into like the jumping up and down and the wave and claps and stuff like that. I remember watching Crystal Lake years ago when we played there, a festival there, True North Festival, and it was my first time that I'd never seen Crystal Lake before. And Rhea was in the band at the time, and were like absolutely killing it to this audience of like 5,000 people or whatever, and they just were going completely off. Incredible live band. If you've never seen Crystal Lake, like they're super sick. Definitely check them out. And I was just super into it, and I was super amped, and I was like, you know what? I'd never do this, but I'm just going to stage dive. So I ran through the stage and dove off past the barricade.
Yeah.
And just like they tried to catch me, and I don't know, I just bowled over a bunch of people.
Oh no.
I just felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry, and just apologizing profusely. And then, but everyone that I'd knocked over like helped me up, and they started apologizing to me, and I was like, I'm the bad guy here.
That might be the most Japanese thing I've ever heard, is like they're sorry for being in your way.
Yeah. It's just insane.
But if I'm gonna die, would you notice? We're falling out of place. We're so hopeless. You know life's a race. On everyone else, you're
Hell yeah. Well, I mean, I'm stoked that you guys got a chance to play in China. And I agree with you. It's a thing that not a lot of Western bands get the opportunity to do. So taking advantage of that and playing to an audience that is admittedly probably hungry for that kind of metal and those kind of bands to come through would be a super cool thing. I was talking to members of the Ocean. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those guys, but they recently played some shows here in Australia, and as part of that, they kind of strung together like a pseudo world tour of dates. Like they had a couple of dates in China,
Oh wow.
and I think they did New Zealand, Australia, and then on their way back through, they were playing in Turkey, I believe, before like getting back to Europe. Um, and they were just saying that like China is definitely like a different kind of frontier when it comes to touring. Like they're like, we haven't really we've booked the shows and we have booked the flights, but it was like a couple of weeks out from tour, and they were just like, and we still haven't really like confirmed if we're doing it yet. They're like, we have all the bits and pieces. There's a bit of a language barrier between us and the promoters, and like we think that we have shows there, but like we don't know if people are buying tickets. Like we don't know if people will be at the shows. Like we'll just show up and hopefully it all goes to plan. So
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that it's all, a lot of like the social media and stuff that we have in the Western world doesn't apply over there. So it's very difficult to gauge on, whether, people are finding out about your show or buying tickets. It's really difficult to understand like the hype, and is it even being promoted? I don't know, but we just kind of wung it and it worked out. So yeah. I'm sure
Yeah, sick. Let's get stuck into talking about the new record. So I've had a listen to it. So firstly, congratulations on putting the record together. I think it's phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
You're very welcome. I wanted to kind of talk about the kind of impetus that you had in the band over the last few years to self-produce the record and to really kind of take the reins on the sonic kind of characteristics of this record. Could you talk me through that a little bit, and particularly your collaboration or returning collaboration with Jeff Dunn as well?
Well, I think that for a long period of time, Make Them Suffer has wanted to do more of a self-produced thing. I think our when Nick and I discuss our thoughts on our discography, we both agree that, or we both feel that, Worlds Apart is probably an album that is among our favorites, or our favorite album. I
listened to it this morning, and it fucking goes. It's great.
Yeah, so that one feels really special for Nick and myself, and that was the other one that we have self-produced. In for the previous, in 2019, was it, when we did How to Survive a Funeral? For that record, we had the privilege of working with Drew Falk, and Jeff Dunn is Drew Falk's mixing engineer,
right,
and works primarily with the guitarists on that, and does a lot of the guitar tones and stuff like that. And Drew works primarily with like a lot of vocalists, and then song arrangement and production elements and stuff. So working with Drew on How to Survive a Funeral, we felt the entire time we were just like a sponge, like watching his workflow and the way that he would go about reaching the decisions that he came to, and just just his general workflow, I suppose, and thought process behind, and reasoning behind decisions that he made and stuff. And we were really like, kind of in awe at how he'd take something that was seemingly complicated to us in terms of like, solving the solution of like, how do we fix this song or whatever. And for him, it was very simple. And so I think after working with him, Nick and I talked with each other, and we felt like, we'd both really like leveled up from that experience, and taken a lot on board of Drew's process, and learned a lot from that. And felt like, for the next one, we felt like we had the tools and ability to be able to self-produce again to a standard that we were going to be proud of. And it was also something that we wanted to be accredited for as well, and like put out a record where we can go, yeah, this was self-produced. So when someone turns around and says, some of these songs are quite like poppy, or the producers taken the reins on this one. Obviously, it's like, no, this was all self-produced. This is all our decisions, and and just like hold ourselves to those songs.
Yeah, and I think like it must be a fairly kind of rewarding thing then to have some of the singles from this record be among the band's like most well received, right? To really kind of highlight the band's profile and the increased attention that this kind of album cycle has got for the band. I think the feedback for that must be pretty rewarding to be like, yeah, well, like those decisions were the right decisions.
Yeah, 100%. It's super rewarding to know that, you know, something that was like entirely us basically was, you know, has been our best received work yet. Yeah, and then on that, yeah. So Jeff was someone that we had cultivated a relationship with, and particularly Nick, having worked with him on the guitars of How to Survive a Funeral, and he'd done some mixes for us in the past. I think he did the mix for Contraband and for Hollowed Heart, and we were really just happy with his mixing ability. And like usual, make themselves a fashion. The process of recording this album was, you know, we wanted to just lock ourselves in a studio for, you know, 2.5, 3 weeks. I wrote a large, probably 70% of the like lyrics and vocals for the album in the studio, which is what I've done on every release of Make Themselves Career, including Neverbloom.
Mm-hmm.
So we just like to put ourselves in that, you know, in that confined space with that added pressure. I think really helps to drive the songs along and get things going. And but if we were going to be doing all the engineering ourselves, there's no way that we would have completed the album in 3 weeks. And it was just nice to have Jeff there to facilitate that, record everyone, and just make sure everything's, you know, he also was helping us be organized with our schedule and timeline and everything. Right. Okay, we got vocals from this block to this block, and we got guitars from this block to this block, and we had the full calendar out to make sure that we were going to tick all those boxes, and we all knew exactly how much work needed to be done in those timeframes. And Jeff, like, absolutely pulled some insane hours on this one. Yeah, I think like in the last week, Jeff worked an average of about 19 hours a day.
Jesus Christ, that's crazy.
Yeah, but we were running short on time, and it needed to get done. And I think, you know, I was probably working 15, 16 hours a day on just being there between being there when Alex was recording my own parts, and then like writing the lyrics for the album in between those moments. You know, it was just nonstop. And I think that's a way that I really like to work, because I think with music, especially in a band, you know, I'm very passionate about it. Nick's I mean, we're all very passionate about Make Them Suffer. And I think when you are so passionate about something, it is very easy to be like too close to a project, and you and ah about certain decision points and go, oh, it's not perfect, and then you overwork it. And it's something that we've done quite a bit before in the past, where we have spent too long on a song and we've kind of like overcooked it, and it just comes out mid, where it could have just been like, we could have just kept it simple as it was in its, you know, earlier demo stages, and it would have been just fine. But we've thought about it too much and whatever. So, you know, with that added pressure and the shortened timeline, I think it just forces things to be moved along. It's like, right, well, that's it. And then once you accept that something is the way it is, you stop thinking about it. You go, no, it's done. And then when you listen back to it, you go, well, actually, that sounds great. Like, I'm not sure why I was doubting it in the first place, you know? Music that's what's so hard about music, is that, it's subjective. But having said that, I think that, there is objective truth to music as well, where like something can be like objectively better than another thing. And I think that is like being able to identify that is something that Nick and I have like tried to grow to understand and have like learned and cultivated over the 15 years of Make Them Suffer or whatever. So yeah.
I can definitely I can hear that on the record in a strange way, right? Like listening to the band's catalog today before our chat, I really wanted to get a sense of like the progression that the band has taken from record to record, and even some of the non-album singles and stuff. And I think for me, the decision to have the record self-titled is a big kind of indicator of like the sonic intent behind the record, right? I was talking to JTKV from Era a couple of months ago when they were here. And they were at a similar point in their career with their most recent record, which is also self-titled. And I was talking to him about it, and he was like, yeah, it's like a reaffirmation of what the band is, of what we do. And this sound is, pulling from all different periods of the band, but it repackages it in a new way so that people can go, this is what the band is. And there's quotes here from you in the press material about this record being like a Make Them Suffer greatest hits. And, just like a culmination of everything that the band has done to date. So I guess, can you add anything to that for me about the decision to leave the record self-titled? Like, was it this kind of idea of like a rebrand or a reset for the band creatively?
I suppose, it goes without saying that the band has kind of, this is like a new chapter of the band. I think that's quite evident, right? And I think it was more just like the excitement of the album, I think, was the natural, the instinctual reasoning for wanting to go with self-titled. We were just in the studio and we were writing one of the songs off the record, which is Weaponized, and I was writing the lyrics, and it just kind of like worked out. I started saying, make them this, make them that. And then I was like, oh, then I could just say, make them suffer. That'd be cool. And then that became the last lyric of that song. And I was like, I can't tell if this is cheesy, but even if it is cheesy, I think it's a good type of cheesy anyway. And then I showed it to Nick and Alex, and we were all really excited about that. Like, that was a moment we were like, yeah, this album's kind of special. Like, that was sort of a moment for us in this year where I think we all felt like we were really onto something with this record. And I was like, that's it. Just call it Make Them Suffer.
On my first listen through, I heard that lyric and I was like the Leo like pointing meme. I was like, oh shit, he did the thing. He said the band. I was like, hell yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so yeah, that was the moment when I guess it started to feel like things were where we wanted to get behind it as the self-titled album, I suppose. But yeah, it goes without saying that we've definitely like, this is a new chapter for the band and everything. Takes its course into your
And I guess like on that note, with the change in the member lineup, the slight kind of change in sound and presentation, there's I think an idea of like a shifting perspective that's happened within the band over the last few years that has resulted in this record. I've seen some stuff that Nick's said about how it changed how he approached the songwriting aspect. I know there's like different guitar tuning elements and stuff on this record in particular. For you, what things were you trying to bring vocally to this record that was a different kind of approach from previous records?
Yeah, I think like philosophically, my approach to writing vocals has changed quite a bit over the years. And it's gone from a place of, I would say it's entered a more like selfless realm, where before I wanted the lyrics to be kind of like all about me, or I wanted to have people think I was smart or clever or really poetic or super emotional and stuff like that. And it was coming from a place of what I wanted other people to think of me. And I just think that my perspective has shifted so much to like what I want people's reaction to the vocals and the music of Make Them Suffer to be when they listen to it now is I just picture like some bogan dude like listening and just going, that's fucking sick. Like that is literally the reaction I want to evoke in people is that's fucking sick. And because I think that's what metal, like that's the funnest part of metal is like that reaction. You know what I mean? Just headbanging to something and it's fucking sick. So
yeah, I will say that like having listened to the record a bunch, I think this is probably the most fun Make Them Suffer record. It feels like, I don't know, joyful, ecstatic. Like there are parts on the record where clearly like you're just kind of going wild with it and doing some kind of crazy shit. And I think like that in itself creatively must be fun to do, to just be like, oh, we can do this. Fuck it. Let's go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's like a number of different parts on the record. There's like a song where it's like almost like a grungy or shoegazy like chorus where I get to do some singing that I've never really done before. And then there's like,
is that really Phoenician blues?
Yeah, yeah. And then there's some vocal like patterns, like, Small Town Syndrome is really like a fun to rap along to and just really cool lyrically. I think it's probably my favorite Make Them Suffer song of all time, actually. But and then there's just like, some really cool like riffs and then back and forth. I think like so much of the fun, like I'm really enjoying writing vocals for Make Them Suffer with this added element of being able to like draw from Alex's screaming ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, writing, singing and melodic parts is like interesting. And yeah, sure, there's this like dynamic in the back and forth between screams and singing. But for me, like the most fun part of writing vocals is writing the bits where we get to do back and forth on the screams. And if you're saying that, like, I think those are some of the a lot of the fun bits and quirky bits that you're talking about on the record. And you saying that it sounds like we're having a lot of fun. It's like, because we are, like, it's the most I've had writing lyrics is writing with Alex in the band, without question.
Yeah, and I think like that comes across on record, right? Like I can tell that there's like a new sense of like creative dynamism, I guess, that and like the call and response aspect between you and Alex feels like it's unlocked a different kind of element in the band and allowed you to kind of explore a bunch of different stuff. I did have some notes here about some of the tracks that I personally like, and Venetian Blues was one of them because I really loved the Onslow project that you did, and that EP is fantastic. And as soon as I got to that part of the record and that song came on, I was like, oh shit, Sean's throwing it back to some of the Onslow stuff. Like, this is cool. Like weaving it into the Make Them Suffer sound. It's still heavy, but there's elements in there that I picked up on is super interesting. I think it's a great track.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I remember when we were writing that song, that was a chorus that, I'd written several choruses for that and kind of talked about a lot of them with Nick. And then I was like, look, man, I really feel strongly that I really want to do this as the chorus. And he was like, look, I think it's really sick, but I think it's like, it might alienate our fans a little bit too much because it's like very far removed from something Make Them Suffer has done before. We've never really been that kind of like, grungy, had that grungy element to our sound. And I basically was like, this song on every album, Nick and I have a song each that's like, this is my song. You know what I mean? This is a song that I want to represent me. And Nick's got songs that are very, very guitar driven. And some of us like, Power Overwhelming on Worlds Apart, for example, is a song where, that was just like, that's Nick's personality as a guitarist and as a person, like in a song. And that's just showcasing Nick. And I was like, this song is me. Just let me have this stuff, please.
let me have this one, Nick.
Yeah. And it was like, yeah. All right, makes sense. If you feel like this is a good representation of you and how you want to position yourself on the record, then 100%. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, to talk about the dynamic between you and Alex, like on that track, she has these very like subtle, almost kind of like backing harmonies to that chorus, which is like super delicate, which is very kind of subtle, but it adds just like a whole bunch of like texture to what you're doing, which,
Yeah.
I just think like there's so much stuff that you can do with two incredibly dynamic vocalists in the band, and you're really utilizing all of those strengths.
For sure. Thank you so much. Yeah. I
Oh,
think
you're welcome.
it's drawing from a lot of, that's a song like that, for example, is like drawing from a lot of influences that a lot of the other songs in the record obviously aren't. Like, it's kind of like a dirty word these days, but like, some shoegaze and
Not dirty at all. Love
yeah.
shoegaze.
Yeah.
I think I was watching the Gaza podcast, and you were wearing a Loveless t-shirt. So like, I know, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that album's incredible, but yeah.
Another track that I wanted to focus on, which you mentioned before, is the closer, Small Town Syndrome, which I think is an immediate kind of album standout. And I've spoken about it with other guests on the podcast before, but there's a real art to creating kind of the finale or like an album closer. And I think this is probably your best. If I'm thinking of the catalog and other closers. This one's quite a personal one too, because it's talking about, Perth and being quite isolated from the rest of Australia and kind of dealing with this small town syndrome, for a lack of like better terms. I also come from a small town in like central Queensland, which is like not as remote as Perth, but definitely remote in terms of Queensland. So I kind of relate to some of the themes that you're talking about there. Can you tell me why that song's so special for you?
Yeah, well, I think just I really love the lyrics to it. The lyrics, it's kind of like a concept song. It's sort of describing the situation of this person trying to flee town, like in a car, and they've got skeletons in the back of their trunk, which is like a metaphor, skeletons in your closet. They've got all these secrets and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get out because the whole town knows what they did.
Yeah.
And that sense of paranoia that follows that. And I think that that's something that can really happen when you're in this sort of, close-knit social groups that a lot of, smaller towns and cities tend to have. There's a lot of like gossip and everyone knows everyone and that sort of thing. And you're in a small town and you like do something like abhorrent or bad or whatever, like everyone's going to know about it, right? So there's that sense of paranoia that surrounds that. And it's not to say, I just found that a lot of it kind of came from, in the sense of isolation that I kind of felt during the like lockdowns and everything, where like WA, we weren't allowed to leave WA. And it's not like Perth is a super small city or anything like that. It's a population of 2 million. So it's pretty big really, but it's quite spread out. But if you are in a certain pocket of Perth, like most people know one another, or by 1 degree, 2 degrees of separation sort of thing, you know people, right? Especially if you're in like a community like the heavy metal one or whatever. And it just kind of feels like a bit of a bubble sometimes. And during that lockdown period, it just definitely felt like we were very trapped. And I suppose the lyrics of the song are, it's kind of an homage to the sense of wanting to escape and get out. And so lyrically, the song kind of means something to me. I think the lyrics are also cool conceptually and tell a cool story. And on the flip side of that, I just think like more than that really is just, I think the song is so fun to like sing along to, and like it's almost like a Lose Yourself or something on the album, where you just you want to rap along to the vocals of the verse. You know what I mean? It's super catchy and upbeat and fun, and just stoked on that one. High energy.
This idea of like wanting to escape and kind of like moving on from the small town mindset that you come from. I think if I look at the trajectory of the band and I look at how things have gone from strength to strength for you. Do you reflect back on, like, say, the period of the band's like inception, or maybe even time before Make Them Suffer was a thing, and then you look on everything that you've done since? You know, you've traveled the world, you've played all these incredible shows. I mean, you've done touring with bands like Bad Omens and Bring Me the Horizon and Parkway, like some of the biggest in the genre. You know, do you reflect on that at all? And are there any kind of like lessons or takeaways that you personally have taken from the band's journey so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's all been a pretty incredible experience. And I think the thing that I often reflect on the most is, and look back on kind of fondly in a way, it was those formative years when we were just so clueless, like absolutely no idea. You know, coming from Perth, it's sort of like, you know, bands on the East Coast, they were able to network with other bands that had toured before and kind of knew the ropes and, you know, oh, okay, so what do we do about this? How do we do band hire? But for us, there was none of that. Like we, you know, we didn't have anyone. We were the first band of our generation to come from Perth to tour. So we like really had no, you know, network to be able to draw information from. And so our first tour over East, or if you can even call it that, was like, we looked at the price of van rentals and said, oh, no way, that's way too expensive. So we're just going to book our flights and then just figure out how to get to the shows. And then, of course, they ended up being 5 times more expensive. And we were catching ferry taxis to shows. And it was just ridiculous. And then half the shows we weren't able to make. But we were just, you know, idiots from Perth with absolutely no idea. And we also felt like, you know, it's funny, someone that has like lived in Perth their whole life or grown up in Perth, like our perspective of Perth is that Perth is this big city, and it's regarded as a big city by the rest of Australia. But, you know, over the years, we've come to learn that a lot of people think that, well, they don't think that about Perth, basically. That's kind of, Perth is kind of like in the Adelaide category of Australian major cities, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of the way people see it. And yeah, so I guess that was just like a learning experience, and then figuring out, all right, just how do we tour? And then going, oh shit, this sucks. We're from Perth. We have to buy flights every time we tour. And other bands have to just get to hop in a van. And so, yeah, starting off with that disadvantage, starting off with a disadvantage, you know, I think has, you know, when I look at the band's history and trajectory, it makes me more proud that we have had just that little bit more to overcome as a band. So I think it makes it a little bit more special, and there's a little bit more history to the band. Look back on those formative years very fondly, for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. I think if we start to kind of wrap up here, obviously the record is coming out soon. It'll be out on November 8th. And I think I will schedule this to air pretty much in that same week. But then post-album release, you're going back to Europe and the UK, supporting Bury Tomorrow. I believe that's kind of like a tour swap arrangement, because they were obviously here for your headline run. Are you pumped for that? Are you excited to get back on the road and go back to Europe?
Yeah, I'm so pumped. Mostly because I mean, we've done so much touring this year and just played so many shows, and I'm not gonna lie, like I am kind of ready for a bit of a break. But after this tour,
I can imagine so. Yeah, you're a busy guy.
Until like mid-Feb or the end of Feb off or something like that. So I'm excited about that time off. But at the same time, if there's one thing I am excited for, it's I think the shows are going to be insane, because I've seen some of the venues that we're playing at, and it's just going to be an incredible experience. But B, those guys, that band, and their crew and everyone that works with Bury Tomorrow is probably some of the nicest, most genuine, like down to earth people that we have ever had the pleasure of touring with. And yeah, I think we're just lifelong mates with those guys immediately from the get go. It was just so nice meeting them, and so happy we get to. This will be our 3rd tour with them in the space of less than a year, and wouldn't have it any other way. It's awesome. Super excited.
Sick. Well, Sean, thank you very much for joining the show today. I'll have links in the description for people to pre-order and stream the record and all that good stuff. But man, thank you so much for giving us your time.
No worries. Thank you. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you. Subscribe now to the Pitch of Discontent Patreon to receive access to extended cuts of our bonus episodes, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, monthly Patreon-only episodes, member-only votes, the TPD community chat, and much more. Go now to patreon.com/tpdpod and join for as little as $5 a month. That link again is patreon.com/tpdpod. Thanks for watching the show.